So, The Modern Footballer, Get Football's new European football magazine. Writers from Get French Football News, Get German Football News, Get Italian Football News, and Get Spanish Football News have been working on this first issue. It's over 100 pages long, more than 40,000 words long. There are 25 major articles in this first issue. It's divided into several sections. There's 10 club columns, which are sort of dedicated to the major European clubs. For example, I look at Barcelona and PSG, comparing Bobby Robson and Ernesto Valverde's very similar sackings for me. Barcelona sort of sacrificing perhaps some success in favour of their sort of search for that sort of ideological nirvana that's so intrinsically linked to the club. I talk about Leonardo's return to PSG and how important that's been for what's been a relatively stable season for them, although the first leg in Dortmund perhaps is something slightly different, but in terms of the general picture, they're actually much more better positioned than they have in recent years. Rich Hall of Football Italia looks at Inter's resurgence over the course of the season, their new owners, and what Antonio Conte's done to improve the club and the team. Obviously going for the Serie A title this year. Axel Falk does a really interesting piece on Borussia Dortmund, comparing Lucien Favre's sort of inability to manage some higher profile names, and the fact that they're so stacked in the attacking areas. What happens when all those players are competing for similar spots? Daniel Pinder, the GGFN editor, looks at Robert Lewandowski and his insane goal record. It's utterly ridiculous, his goal record. In fact, there was a tweet on the Modern Footballer Twitter account comparing him to Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, and has basically the same goal record over the last 5 years. And Daniel asks if he's a little bit underrated. I think that's a very fair point. Really interesting piece. Sam Brooks looks at De Ligt's start in Turin. Been a little bit underwhelming so far. Mohamed Ali does a brilliant piece on Marseille and their FFP worries under AVB. Had a really good season. AVB's done a really good job. With limited resources, but despite the fact they look set to return to the Champions League, which would be massive for them, problems may yet be on the horizon. Eric Devin, who writes with me for The Guardian for GFFN on Ligue 1, he does a great piece on Lyon's new young players. There's pieces on Real Madrid and a number of others too, so keep your eye on that. Then there's 10 player profiles on emerging young talents across the continent. Erling Haaland, of course, features. I don't think you could have any European outlet not covering Erling Haaland. He's been absolutely fantastic. Still a little bit raw for me, but his movement is unbelievable. His anticipation, he seems to react half a second quicker to anybody else, not just on the pitch, but perhaps across the continent. He's fantastic. Really interesting pieces on Sandro Tonali, really interesting Brescia midfielder who's pushing for place in the Italian national team. Ferran Torres, really good piece on him by Tom Canton about his push for a place in the Spain squad perhaps this summer. Dejan Kulusevski by Sam Brooks. He looks at the new Juventus winger. He was actually the second biggest transfer of the January transfer window after Bruno Fernandes to Manchester United. £35 million currently on loan at Parma from Atalanta, but will be joining Juve in the summer. He looks not only 19, he looks like a really exciting talent. Marcus Thuram's covered. Julian Brandt as well. There's a number of really good articles. Eduardo Camavinga, who have by Rich Allen of GFFN. Really good piece on him about he's only 17 still, and his rise over the course of the year. That sort of seminal performance against PSG earlier in the year really put him in the shop window. And there's talk, as Rich mentions, about a $100 million move to Real Madrid, and reasons behind their sporting director Olivier Latong's sacking were perhaps linked to that move. So really interesting insight there. And perhaps my favourite is just because of the player. It's a great piece as well, but about Baptiste Santamaria, who's at Angers, one of my favourite French clubs. He's a holding midfielder, and he's been absolutely fantastic for them for a number of years now since joining. And Tom Wiseman does a great program. He's a big Angers fan, so really interesting insight on him. He could be in the Premier League by next season, or Napoli were linked quite heavily with him, I think, over the summer. Great player, absolutely brilliant player, and underrated massively in league, and he's a fantastic holding midfielder, can do so much. Then there's a selection of feature articles sort of looking at more historical issues. Tom Scholes has a great piece on Calciopoli. I look at Gary Lineker, one of my favourite players from yesteryear, and his stay at Barcelona and his dealings with Johan Cruyff and the Hisperia immunity there at Barcelona. When the president sacked Luis Aragonés, who was coach and half the squad, or more than half the squad, for sort of speaking out against him, and bringing Johan Cruyff and Lineker was around while that was going on. Drew Thompson has a brilliant piece on Sebastian Deiser, who I remember from the early 2000s, an extremely talented German midfielder, but succumbed to injuries and depression, and a really interesting insight into his story and what football can learn from that. And the magazine starts with a roundup of all the latest sort of news stories from major talking points from across the continent in recent weeks. Piece on Getafe, their brilliant rise, fantastic win over Ajax this week. Hansi Flick at Bayern Munich, whether he'll stay or not. Rennes, and they're doing fantastic well under Julian Stefan, up to third, could be in the Champions League next year. There's a good couple of dozen of those, nearly, I think, so 20 or so of those from Germany, Spain, Italy and France. So it's the Modern Footballer is £8 from the GFFN website, with £2 postage. The PDF version is £3.50. It's something I'm really proud of. I was lucky enough to be asked to edit and design this issue, so if you get the chance to check it out, I'd recommend it. Thank you very much.